Murdered a Podcast. I'm your host, AB. And this week on Mama Murdered a Podcast, we're doing something a little different. We're doing something we've never done before, and I didn't even realize we have never done this before. So this week, we're just going to do like an update episode. Because there has been a lot of stuff going on in the true crime world, and a lot of stuff going on with some A-list celebrities. So, with all that being said, without further ado, let's get right into it. Because 55-year-old Sean Diddy Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. Brother Love, whatever he's renamed himself now, he was arrested at a New York City hotel on Monday, September 16th of this year, 2024. And he was arrested on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And he was taken into custody at the Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. Now, the Justice Department called this a years-long scheme to sexually abuse and exploit women, allegedly using his business empire to commit these crimes. And also, before I forget, this is all speculation, this is all alleged. I don't have time to be getting sued. So, this is a case that I do want to do a deep dive on as more information comes out. So, I'm not going to hit every single thing that's happened since Diddy's arrest because that's a lot. But, I do want to touch on some of the things that I've read and seen so far. So, one of the first things that Diddy tried to do after being arrested was that he obviously tried to get out on bond. Because he has more money than God, you would think that would be easy. But because he has allegedly been known to threaten witnesses before, and because he has attempted to tamper with evidence before, his bond request was denied. Diddy has even been heard on phone calls that he's able to make from jail to his family, asking them to intimidate witnesses, which some of are his alleged victims. There's a phone call of him telling his son to get rid of all the pizza boxes and not forget to recycle them, and that just feels very code wordy to me. And even though the jail phones literally have an automated recorded message letting inmates know that all of their calls are being recorded, so maybe he thinks this code word is just nobody's going to think about all these pizza boxes. Like, how many pizzas are you talking? What are we talking about here? So that'll be interesting to see what that was all about. There's a lot more phone calls and a lot more creepy stuff being said, but we'll have to dive deeper into that later. So Diddy pled not guilty to the charges that were filed on him in September. And for the reasons I've already listed, along with a few other reasons, Diddy was denied bail by the courts. But Diddy's legal team has been working around the clock to try to have Diddy kept out of federal custody, and they've obviously requested a new bond hearing since the first one was denied. And as of yesterday, in an article on NBCnews.com, it says that the prosecution has filed an opposition to the motion in the Southern District of New York, where they're accusing Diddy of engaging in obstruction of justice, even while he's been behind bars. I guess that's not hard to do when you have so much money and power and you just think you're untouchable. Now, there was also a quote in that NBCnews.com article that said that Diddy has allegedly, quote unquote, continued to try to evade law enforcement monitoring, corruptly influence witness testimony, and further attack the integrity of the proceedings. And I say that to say this. I've heard it be reported on more than once that law enforcement had to go in and make the arrest on Diddy a lot earlier than they were expecting, just so that he wouldn't have time to be able to intimidate witnesses and or his alleged victims. Because it's more than just that. There have been more than a dozen civil lawsuits filed against Diddy since his arrest. There's even one lawyer who claims that he's representing more than 100 alleged victims who all claim they were sexually abused by Diddy. But there are so many other, multiple A-list celebrities whose names have also been brought up in connection to the charges that Diddy's facing, including names like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Ashton Kutcher, Jennifer Lopez, and many, many more. That's not even touching the Usher and Justin Bieber claims, which I'll wait to get into during the deep dive. So, Diddy has been pretty well known in the industry for his white parties, and these parties are groups of the who's who of Hollywood. But rumor has it that after a certain time during these parties, things start to take a different turn. And that these white parties would go from a regular celebrity party to what is now being called a freak-off party. And during these freak-off parties, it's been alleged that some real sick shit went down. Like some shit so freaky that Diddy was probably the sole reason that the baby oil industry has stayed rock solid over the years. Because when Diddy's house was raided, as he was being arrested, there were more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil inside of Diddy's house. That's not counting the hundreds of bottles of lube and other things that would typically only be used during sex. It was so bad that when one of the men who works as a part of Diddy's legal team came out to make a statement where he claimed that America as a whole is a consumer, and he talked about how we just love to buy things in bulk, he basically said that, like, Sam's Club and Costco were our favorite places to shop. He's not wrong, they have free samples. But Costco heard about this, and they released a statement of their own, making sure to let the whole world know that they do not and have never sold pallets worth of baby oil. So, there's that. But what happened at those freak-out parties is still a pretty big mystery. So, I won't waste our time with my speculations, but I will say that I've started reading some of the lawsuits, and it's a lot. It's a lot. But again, that's something I want to do in a deep dive. This is more of a just quick overview. Now, there was a raid done on Diddy's jail cell not too long ago, but there was allegedly tons and tons of notes and evidence that would have shown that he was attempting to silence his alleged victims, and just so much stuff that would have been really useful during a trial. But yesterday, during a court appearance, the judge ruled that none of this evidence that was found and collected during the raid of his jail cell would be able to be used during court as evidence. The judge ruled that all of the notes and information that were collected during the cell search was to be destroyed, and that the original copies of these notes and things that were found in Diddy's cell would stay with the judge, and that it would be determined at a later date if and when they should be used during a court case. So that's also interesting. And when he showed up to this court date, Diddy had also somehow been able to get his lawyers to talk the judge into letting him agree to not wear shackles into the courtroom, and I still can't figure out how they made that one happen. Now, one of Diddy's former bodyguards has also come out to talk openly about some of the things that he saw and heard during the time that, he was working as Diddy security. There's also a lot to dig into there. So, it's a lot of allegations that we'll have to get to at a later date, because I'm still in the process of reading through the lawsuits that have been filed against Diddy. So, that will take time to read through and then take notes on, because even before Diddy's arrest, he was already in some pretty hot water because of the hotel security video that was leaked to the public in May of this year. And if you haven't seen the video, you must live under a rock, and if not, go look it up because, well, maybe don't. It's really disturbing. It's really hard to watch. But it says a lot. That really short video says a whole lot. Now, this video was obtained by CNN and released to the public. The video was from 2016 when Diddy was dating singer Cassie Ventura. And the two were staying at a California hotel at the time. Like I said, this video is really hard to watch. You can see Cassie come out of the hotel room with a hood pulled over her head and a bag in her hand. She almost looks like she's walking at a fast pace, but also it looks like she's trying to tiptoe down the hallway so that she doesn't draw attention to herself. Now, once she comes out of the hotel door, you can see that she heads straight towards the elevators, and then from that same hotel door, you see Diddy come out behind her kind of running in nothing but a towel. He chases her down until he is finally able to catch up with her while her back is still turned to him because she's waiting on the elevator to open. But before the elevator can open, Diddy grabs her by the back of her head and literally throws her on the floor. Like, picks her up and throws her on the floor. He kicks her multiple times before he then picks her bags up off the ground and drags her back down the hallway and back into that hotel room. And when I say he dragged her down the hallway, that is not an exaggeration. He grabs either her arm or maybe the sleeve of her hoodie and drags her body down the hallway. So this video was captured by surveillance cameras at the hotel in 2016, and the hotel was allegedly paid a pretty good chunk of money to keep this being released, to the public. But then for whatever reason, in May of this year, the video was leaked and people were outraged. There was a complaint filed that detailed how Diddy was super drunk and saying that he punched Cassie in the face, blacking her eye. Cassie allegedly waited for Diddy to fall asleep before she tried to leave the hotel room quietly, but Diddy woke up and started yelling and chasing her, which is what we see in the video. And then according to the complaint, Diddy also picked up a flower vase that was sitting on a table in the hallway in the hotel and threw the vase at Cassie. So, needless to say, Diddy's a monster, and this is where his legal trouble and his downfall kind of begin. But honestly, I don't even think we know the half of it yet. Now, as far as I know, there has been another bond hearing set for this Friday, so I believe that's going to be to go over the possible release, for him to get out on bond. And before we move on to our second update, I just want to say how ironic I think it is that now that this music mogul and, A-lister celebrity is having to do some time in this Brooklyn detention center, Diddy's legal team have filed so many complaints about the conditions of this jail. Which is crazy because for years and years and years, this jail has been good enough for me or you or anyone else in the general public to be locked up in. But Diddy? No. He is much more deserving of better standards. Because after these complaints, I believe I did hear that there's going to be an investigation into the condition of the jail. And it's this kind of stuff that really pisses me off because he's no better than me, you, or the guy that lives under the bridge down the road. But let me get off this soapbox because we have another update on good old Gypsy Rose. If you've been following this, you know how crazy this is because what in the hell is she even doing? So, Gypsy Rose, who we've covered before in a 2-part episode on this podcast, she was released from prison on December 28th, 2023, after she served 8 out of her 10-year prison sentence. And since Gypsy had gotten married to her husband Ryan Anderson on July 21st, 2022, when she was still in prison, when she was released from prison, Ryan picked her up and the two kind of started their lives together. But then, no, scratch that, because it was only 3 months after Gypsy was released from prison that she and Ryan announced their separation publicly. And let me just say, her estranged husband, Ryan Anderson, he loves to do stuff publicly. He loves to get on TikTok and let's do a poll. And if you know, you know. So, Ryan and Gypsy publicly announced their separation in late March of this year, 2024. And then on April 4th, 2024, Gypsy can be seen holding hands with Ken Urker. Now, I'm not sure if we touched on Ken in our Gypsy Road episodes or not, but if not, let me refresh everybody who may not know. Ken was a man who dated Gypsy for 2 years while she was still incarcerated. Ken and Gypsy broke up, but they remained friends, according to Gypsy. So she got married, got released from prison to finally be able to be with her husband, then she only stayed with him for 3 months before they called it quits, and then a week later, Gypsy's holding hands with her ex, Ken. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I know this is a lot of breakups and makeups and shit to keep up with, but I'm doing my best to not make it any more confusing than it already is. But don't you worry because the plot thickens. Yeah, I know, you're wondering how this can get any crazier than it is, but it can and it does. So, Ryan and Gypsy separate in March, sometime between mid and late March, and then bam, she's back together with Ken. But then on May 24th of this year, Ken and Gypsy find out that they are pregnant. Which I'm going to also leave my opinions about her having a baby and being a mother to myself because that's not why we're here. So, naturally, when Ken and Gypsy announced their pregnancy to the public, the rumor mill was working overtime and the whole world wanted to know how she could possibly know for sure that this baby was Ken and not Ryan's. No worries though, because the internet was not going to stop until Gypsy had a DNA test done to see who her baby daddy was, and lo and behold, Kim Urker, you are the baby daddy. That was said in my Maury voice in my head in case you didn't get it. But if you can't keep up with all this madness, fear not, because Lifetime did an entire Life After Lockup series featuring Gypsy Rose, Ryan, and Ken. So we got to watch a lot of this stuff as it was happening, and trust me on this one, I tell you that it was like watching a train wreck. Like, you know it's bad, but for whatever reason, you just can't look away. And I haven't really heard much more in the Gypsy Rose department, well, at least not anything that's worth mentioning here. So, for our last and final update, I wanted to talk a minute about the Delphi, Indiana murders of Libby German and Abby Williams that have been unsolved since February of 2017. Now, I have done extensive research on this case for a previous podcast, and I went back and redid it for this podcast, but I've purposely been waiting to record and release it just because I knew there would be a major update once an arrest was made, and there was an arrest made back in 2022. So, a quick rundown of this case. 13-year-old Abby and 14-year-old Libby were best friends, and they were inseparable. The girls were out of school on a Monday, I believe it was. And they had both been able to talk their parents/guardians into letting them go to the Monon High Bridge for a couple of hours to kind of hike and hang out. This was something that people do in Delphi, Indiana. Apparently, there's not much else to do. So the girls had been dropped off by Libby's older sister, Kelsey, and then Libby's dad was planning to pick the girls up a few hours later. But when he showed up, the girls were nowhere to be found, and they were soon reported missing. Now, the searches for the girls started almost immediately, and it was the very next morning on February 14th, 2017, that both the bodies of Libby and Abby were found pretty close by to the same Monon High Bridge that they had planned on walking the day before. And for years and years and years, it seemed like this case was almost unsolvable. But there were two key pieces of evidence that were actually taken from one of the girls' phone. Now, assuming that the man that followed them and killed them had been making the girls feel uncomfortable, one of the girls brought out their phone and kind of panned behind them as if they were taking a video in selfie mode on their phone. That video showed the man who quickly became the main suspect in the case, who would for years only be known as Bridge Guy. There were also only 4 words that the suspect spoke that were released to the public, and those words also came from the recording on the girl's phone. The only thing that the public knew was what this man looked like from a very far distance away, and what he sounded like saying only these 4 words that were released to the public. These 4 words were, "Guys down the hill." Guys down the hill. But it seemed like that's really all there was, so when there was finally an arrest made, it kind of shocked everybody. The arrest was of a local pharmacy worker named Richard Allen, and he was arrested in October of 2022 and charged with 2 counts of murder. And since 2022, a lot of things have come out, and the trial was finally set to start, with the jury selection starting on October 14th of this year, 2024, and the trial just ended on November 11th. There's been a lot of media coverage surrounding this case, and a lot of unexpected twists and turns and catfishing. And with all of the coverage and the craziness, there was a gag order set on this case and anything pertaining to this case, which still hasn't been lifted, even after the trial was over, and the trial was also not publicly televised, which is kind of weird. We're so used to watching any trial we can think of on court TV that it was weird to not be able to see this one. So the details of what happened during the trial and what new information was learned is still coming out from the handful of people that went to the courthouse every day to watch the trial from inside the courthouse. Because again, it's hard to know what's going on if there's no cameras in there to record the trial. The only thing we have to go off are the people that were actually there in person. And I'll go over the trial in the deep dive that we're doing. I think we're going to start this case next week. But Richard Allen was finally convicted of the murder of Abby Williams and Libby German on November 11th, 2024, after 7 years of no one knowing what happened to these girls that day. His sentencing date is set for December 20th, 2024 at 9 a.m., and I hope they throw the book at him. Simple as that. And I think that's all I have for you this week. I thought this was kind of fun. Just a quick rundown, quick updates. I was thinking we haven't even updated, what was going on with Gypsy, and she's been out for almost a year now. And with all the craziness she keeps herself involved in, I figured, why the hell not? If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast, rate the podcast, leave comments, do all the things. I love you guys so much. Let's do it again. Same time, same place, next Wednesday. See you then.
That's how my mama murdered a podcast.